come once again to discuss things.
Alright. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2. Joining me today is Zazubar. Hello, Zazubar.
Hello, Zazubar.
What? Huh? What?
Oh, wait, no, never mind. What's going on, everyone? I'm tired and confused and read a comic book tonight and it fucked me up. Anyway, hi.
Well, speaking of comic books that fuck you up, so today we are diverging from what we had been doing with scary stories because it just kind of happened to be, you know, classic literary type stuff. That's just how the dice rolled. But we wanted to just do general scary stories, and so we're going to Tales from the Crypt. Technically, kind of, sort of the first issue, but not really.
This is very complicated. It took us a good, 45 minutes to work this out through some internet research.
Yeah, so, Tales from the Crypt was originally published under some other name, Crypt of Terror. And then they just changed the name 17 issues through, which I could just not imagine happening today, and continuing to number it the same and everything. So we're reviewing the very first comic titled Tales from the Crypt.
Indeed we are. Sorry. Phone went off, I had to mute it. Indeed we are. So, I'm not a huge Tales from the Crypt fan, not out of any sense of animosity towards it. That was never really introduced to it in any real deep way. I watched a couple episodes here and there. I used to watch Chiller a lot. Chiller is a TV channel that I get on FiOS, and they play a lot of classic and current horror stuff. A lot of it's really bad. But
big surprise.
Occasionally they'll play something. Well, it's like a lot of the stuff they play is made for TV garbage. It's like Sci-Fi Channel but worse.
Oh God, I didn't even realize that was possible.
Well, because Sci-Fi Channel makes all their bad shit nowadays anyway is made with we know what this is. But Chiller stuff isn't really like that. It's more sort of earnest than that. It just doesn't work. But a lot of it. But then they also play some classic stuff. That's how I watched the 90s Werewolf TV show, which was just about a werewolf, so it was just called Werewolf.
Okay, I was about to say, Werewolf of that high school thing? I can never remember the name of that show. How did I watch that show and don't know the name of it?
You talking about Teen Wolf?
No. The one that was on ABC Family.
No. This was a serious horror drama. This was a ripoff of the Incredible Hulk TV show.
Okay.
This was a college student whose roommate was a werewolf. He gets bitten by his roommate. He kills his roommate, and then there's a bounty hunter who is trying to, bring him in for killing his roommate. And he's now afflicted with werewolfism, and he goes around occasionally solving people's problems by accident.
Wait, hold on. Before we go on, Bill and I were talking about the Supergirl TV show since tonight. As we're recording this, the pilot aired tonight. Mm-hmm. So you know the thing, besides them not using the word Superman that pissed me off the most? What? They called Kryptonian language Kryptonese, and that just annoyed the shit out of me. Anyway,
but they call it that in the comics, though.
I've never heard it called that in the comics. It's always been Kryptonian.
Well, they used to call it Kryptonese. They haven't done it in a long time.
It's still a stupid name, and they shouldn't ever do it again.
Well, they used to call Kryptonians Kryptonites.
That's stupid. God,
this is 1948, and you gotta cut them some slack. They ate a lot of boiled food back then. Their minds were all fucked up.
Okay, anyway,
Speaking
Supergirl,
of 1948.
Supergirl, did not enjoy it. Speaking of 1948, or more like 55.
Old school comics. With
there we go.
Questionable language.
This week we are discussing the first issue called Tales from the Crypt. It's got the Crypt Keeper in it. It counts. It's the first Tales from the Crypt.
That's his justification. It counts.
It counts, and so does your mom.
Oh,
so anyway,
wait, what?
Yeah, so anyway, Bill, I consider myself a fan of Tales from the Crypt. I haven't watched every episode, but I have a number of the seasons, just because I happened to get one really cheap, and then I was like, I should probably buy the others, so I bought them whenever I see them around,
Right. Tales from the Crypt
so
has provoked me on some occasions, as we had last week.
Yeah?
Do you remember? No, you remember the conversation about the Arnold Schwarzenegger episode?
Oh, right.
Provoked me in a sense of rage.
Right. No, so, like, I don't want to call myself a casual fan, because I think I'm a step above that since I've gone out and bought the show.
Money on it, so I'm a hardcore.
Yeah, somewhere between casual and hardcore Tales from the Crypt fan.
Gotcha.
And we did a Geeky Gentleman on the first season of the show a couple months back, and that was fun. So, I've never read the comics, though.
Me neither.
And watching, like, I didn't know when I was a kid that the show used to be a comic book, and I didn't really ever find that out until well after I'd started buying the show, and I just happened to watch a documentary called Tales from the Crypt that was on it, and it was all about how the comics got in trouble with censorship and yada yada yada.
Yeah, whenever you see, I found out it was based on a comic, again, not having been a fan of the show as a kid, through comic book documentaries, because it always gets brought up, because it was such a major player in...
Influence.
Yeah,
Yep.
It was a major player in the comics code, and everything that happened around that, and seduction of the innocent and all that, so it played a huge role in the story of comics from that perspective, so it's always brought up in terms of, like, well, this was part of why the comics code was a thing, like stuff like this.
Yeah.
Because there was a time where this stuff was way, infinitely more popular in comics than superheroes were.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely about the era, because you got, like, the 30s and 40s where Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman were all coming out, and they're, like, selling millions of copies each. But by the 50s, their popularity had really dwindled post-war, and you didn't get a resurgence of superheroes till you got characters like the Barry Allen Flash
Right.
and Space Green Lantern coming out in the late 50s, early 60s.
Right. Marvel and DC sort of had a resurgence of sorts at the same time and sort of rebranded themselves into what we know of them now, basically.
Yeah, really. So it is a really interesting history of the comics, but let's go ahead and talk about the comic itself.
Oh, boy.
More stories, yeah. Well, more stories in this than I realized, and I like some of them more than others.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be, like, maybe 2. There were, like, 5 in here, man. But they were all really short, though. Like, brutally short.
Yeah, and, like, some of them I like more than others.
Oh, yeah.
So, how do you want to do this? Do you want to go, like, just story by story, or what?
I say we go... See, it's weird. We might as well go chronologically, because if we don't, I feel like we're going to leave some stuff out, and we're going to sort of jump all over the place. So, I say we go chronologically.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the one with the guy on the ship. What's it called?
God, the boat one. It Came from the Sea, I think is what it's called.
The Thing from the Sea.
Thing from the Sea, okay. Oh, boy.
Okay. So, like, my immediate thought on... I have 2 immediate thoughts on this.
Right.
Number 1, writing it in second-person perspective is weird.
It's really, really annoying, and it's sort of like... And this was a thing that comic book writers did back in the day. You know, they would write in the narration boxes, what the character was doing for no other reason than, well, we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Right.
It isn't done for any narrative purpose. There's no, like, Frank Miller paying homage to noir thrillers or anything like that. This is just, we want to make sure that these dumbasses get the point. And
yeah,
it's
totally.
really, really annoying.
Well, like, I don't mind that, because it's a 50s comic, so I expect that.
Right.
It's just, I've never seen a comic use you. Because that's second-person perspective.
Right.
And that's such a rare writing style, period.
I was kind of concerned that the whole book was going to be that way, because the first story is told that way, because it's supposed to feel like the Crypt Keeper is telling you the story, and sort of, like, doing it in a way of, like, imagine you did this, and imagine you did that, and then you did this, and then this happens to you because you did all of that. It's sort of done out of an attempt to scare the audience by putting them into the story. And I don't think it works at all.
It'd be more effective if not for the fact that we see the main character.
Yeah, and
like,
that's why it doesn't work.
Everything were drawn from first-person perspective, that would certainly make it feel better, because I don't know about you, but I'm not a tall white man with a blonde hair and a mustache.
Oh, I'm missing the mustache, but all those other things describe me perfectly.
that wears green suits on boats?
Nah, I've never done either of those. I mean, I've been on a boat, but I was never in a green suit or on a boat this big. It doesn't work in this medium at all. It could totally work if this was just a prose piece. It would work fine. But it doesn't work because it's like you're reading the same story being told by two different people, you know?
Yeah, it's really weird. So like the narration is probably the biggest problem with the first thing that jumps out, and probably the biggest problem with the first story. The other thing that jumps out to me, and I don't, you haven't started watching Archer yet, correct?
No.
Okay, you should because you're a James Bond fan. But anyway, the character looks so much like the character Ray from Archer. Like, I'm gonna look it up and I'll put it on screen, just so you guys can see it. But it's so distracting to me.
He's one of those characters. He's one of those characters in horror stuff that I hate, where he's just a rich guy who's just hanging around. Like he doesn't really have any particular purpose. He's just going off to do a thing, and he happens to have a lot of money, and happens to be very sort of like classy and like your basic sort of handsome lead. And I never find those people compelling as protagonists. And that wasn't really an issue here, or I didn't find it as distracting here because I was more distracted by how nonsensical and random the story was.
I mean, we'll get into that, but look at the link I sent you.
Oh yeah, I can totally see that. The hair is.
Yeah.
The hair looks orange in some panels.
But that's just the scanning.
Yeah, it could be just the crappy scan. But no, I totally see that. That guy looks a lot like a young Mel Brooks, though, the character from Archer.
Oh yeah, I could agree with that.
I'm wondering if that was intentional.
No, actually, it's side note. The way they got Archer is they just pulled random people off the street and asked them to like let them take pictures of them.
Oh really?
Yeah, that's how they did their character designs.
Speaking of Archer, I saw an awesome Halloween costume on Facebook yesterday that was Archer, and the person had taken a Sharpie and just basically put a James Bond costume on, and then took a Sharpie and they did the artist lines, you know, and all the shadowing and everything, and it looked really impressive.
That's
yeah, it's really cool. Anyway.
No, but so like I just found that really distracting and kind of funny because like the other day at work I was you know what sewing patterns are?
Maybe?
They're like these things that you can buy that have like, you know, paper layouts so that you can cut cloth and then sew it together to make pictures that are on the front of the package.
Right.
I was sorting through those at work because that's what I have to do sometimes, and one of the like drawings of the people on the front looked like Archer. So that it's just a weird thing that happened to me because like that's less than a week apart.
Too into this show, man. It's following you around and shit.
I know, it's weird. But no, I thought I'd point that out because it's just this strange, like it was so distracting throughout the story. But let's go ahead and talk about the monster, the plot thread itself.
So fucking random. So, okay, hang on, let me describe it because it makes me laugh. And this is not, let me just say this overall, just so we can get it out there and clear the air. This is not bad overall as a horror comic, as a first outing. Well, not as a first outing, but as sort of like the premiere of the classic Tales from the Crypt formula and sort of under that name. But it's just like each individual story is all about the punchline. Like, that's it. There's nothing else to them aside from the punchline. So it all depends on how much fun you're having reading it up to the punchline. And I think that in the regards to this first story, I think it was one of the ones that I was having the most fun with, but I don't know if it was for the right reasons. Because, okay, so this dude, he goes on a boat, and he gets the cabin number 13 or whatever it is, because they've only got one cabin left, and he's bunking with this other dude. And the person who brings him into the room is like, oh, it's cabin 13, and superstitious crazy shit goes on in here, there's a ghost. And he's just like, bye, you're an idiot, get out of here. So, he and his roommate meet up, and they have, like, the greatest dialogue ever, where they're like, oh, hi, we're roommates.
I'm going to bed now.
Yeah, I'm going to bed. That's it. And then he runs out, and then later in the night, he wakes up, he runs out, and his roommate's running out of the room screaming for No real reason that we can assume. And it's also really confusing because he bolts out of the room. Then the protagonist goes back to sleep and wakes up thinking that the guy is still in the room. But why wouldn't he just look at the bunk and see if he was still there? Like, I was really confused. Like, I thought the roommate ran out of the room and came back, or that he dreamt that he had ran out of the room. I was really confused. But anyway.
No, I wasn't confused by that. Like, they clearly show there are curtains on the bed, so I thought he assumed the roommate came back and went back to sleep.
No, there's nothing. I'm looking at the panels right now. There is nothing to indicate that. It's the roommate running out, he goes back to sleep, and then he wakes up, and it's just him looking out the window.
No, I'm just saying, like, the beds are shown to have curtains, so he's assuming that the roommate came back, and that's why he has some dialogue or whatever about that, where he assumes the roommate... probably isn't in the mood for breakfast
anyway. But the roommate's curtain is open.
No, it's closed. I'm looking at it right now, Bill.
I'm looking at the panel. I'm looking at pages 5 and 6, and on page 6, the second panel on the left is like...
With the ooh thing, right?
No, the next one. Where you see him probably isn't in the mood for breakfast anyway. You can see the...
Yeah, his bunk, the roommate's bunk was the top bunk. You can see the curtains are closed.
Oh, I thought he was in the bottom bunk, my bad. Okay. I just didn't look at that closely enough, and I didn't know those were curtains. I thought those were just, like... I didn't know what they were. All right.
Okay. No, but, like, so that part didn't bother me, but, yeah, I mean, it is silly, regardless of all that. It is a silly kind of comic.
So then he goes to the captain, and he's like, yo, this is fucked up, so we need to do something about this. And I think something happens in between that makes him more sure that there's, like, a ghost. Oh, yeah, he actually sees the ghost. So he sees the ghost.
Yeah.
It's basically a guy covered in lots of hair, and that's it.
Well... I think it's supposed to be water.
What?
I think it's supposed to be like dripping water because they describe it wet and moist. It doesn't look good.
It looks like hair.
I know. It looks like Sasquatch.
Or exactly. Or like seaweed, maybe.
It looks like someone threw Chewbacca in the water.
Yeah, exactly. So then he goes to the captain and he's like, "Yo, Captain, we got to go in there. And we gotta figure out what's what." The captain's like, "All right, we'll do that." So they go in there. They chill out. They probably light up a joint. They're talking about shit. And then the ghost comes back, scares the shit out of both of them, and the captain then just randomly confesses to having killed someone in the past. We had no idea prior to this that somebody in that room had been killed. And then he says that this is that person, he vanishes, and then that's it. And I was just like, what the fuck, dude?
Well, I don't know. I thought it was supposed to be the whole guilty conscience coming to light thing, because, the ghost had been haunting that room, and now that he's in it. That's the impression I got from it.
It's just, it didn't work for me at all, because there's no setup prior to this.
That anybody
had been murdered, that the captain was shady in any way. And, more than all of that, there's also still no resolution as to, why is the ghost haunting that room in particular? Why does it take this form? Why does it do the things that it does? All this different stuff is just left up in the air. And
yeah,
I don't know, it didn't do anything for me. It just sort of made me go, what? Wait, hang on. What? It confused me, and that was all it did.
It's not great by any means. I don't know, I didn't have as many problems with it as you did. Because, in the back of my mind, this is about 1 million times better than most 50s comics I've read.
No, I can't agree with that. This is...
Really?
No.
I cannot stand Silver Age comics for the life.
They don't bug me. They don't bug me at all.
I read Silver Age comics and I roll my eyes. And I can enjoy, the fun stuff in comics, like the, gollies and G's, but, we did, Jack Kirby's Fourth World Omnibus a while back, and I hate the Newsboy Legion Army with every bone in my body. I hate all of them, especially Flippadippa. They are by far the most annoying, stupid thing ever. So I had absolutely no patience for it. I just lose interest. I fell asleep while I was reading that book, and this is miles above that.
See, no, I was nodding off a little bit reading this because I was just so uninvested in it. It's so quick. There was nothing about the first story, or I'm gonna say really any of them. None of them really had a hook that drew me in.
Okay, that's fair. All right, so let's go ahead and give the first story. We'll do ratings per story then.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm gonna give the first story probably 3 out of 5 finicky portholes.
Okay, fair enough. I'm gonna give the first story 1.5 out of 5 colorful, flamboyant wardrobes for rich dudes who don't have any purposes in life. I just didn't do anything for me, man.
No, that's fair. Not I didn't think it was great. I just enjoyed it, more than I do most other, Silver Age era comics.
Right, and I think the 1.5 is just for how goofy it is. It's entertaining on a level of just goofiness.
Yeah. Okay, so the next story is really short. It's literally a page of prose.
Yeah. So there's a mix of that in this. There's a couple of prose, and then there's a bunch of mini comic stories, and they're all differently written in different styles, and the only thing that's tying them together is that they're all sort of horror slanted.
So this story, it's like a guy's going to a local tribe, so racism alert everybody. A guy's going to a local tribe looking for his friend that has orange hair. He sits down with the chief and asks the chief if they've seen him anywhere because he has orange hair, so he should really stand out. And then he looks over toward the door as someone closes it and notices that there's an orange tuft of hair on the floor, and we're left to assume that the villagers kill him.
What I got out of it was that he goes to the tribe and he's just like, "Yo, so where's my friend?" And they're like, "Hey, we don't know, man." And then one of them is like, "Oh, I know." And he goes out and he lifts up a rock and he sees a shrunken head.
No,
that's what it says in the text, though.
There was an object hidden under the mat, and Candy braced himself, wondering whether the chief and his grim-faced tribesmen realized he had seen it. Kennedy began to rise, groping for his gun, and his hand trembled as it touched the empty holster. They knew they had watched his face when he had seen the object, and even as they began to close in on him from all sides of the hut, Kennedy was conscious of the shrunken head there on the floor underneath the grass mat that had been moved, the head with the red hair looking so ludicrous over the shriveled skin, the head with the blushy flame-colored mustache.
Yeah, so
they clearly, he's in the hut, they close the door as he notices the shrunken head.
Right.
And then they start to move in on him and are going to kill him.
Yeah. No, I thought you just said there was hair on the floor.
No, he notices the hair first. What I was getting.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were like, that was it. Like, he just saw some hair and he was like, oh.
No.
That tells me the whole story. Okay.
No, but so, that's the basics of the story. I mean, it certainly verges on racism, but I don't want to call it that because, I mean, it's not like this kind of thing didn't happen. People did use shrunken heads.
No, it's just sort of a basic sort of, it's sort of like generic viewpoint of these sorts of tribes and what they do.
Yeah.
Can you even call this a story, though?
I mean,
it's almost more of like an anecdote. Just sort of like so there was this guy, right? He went to a tribe.
It feels like a kind of story you'd hear someone say as opposed to something you'd read, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like a narrative. It's more of just sort of...
You know what this is? I would call it a story. This is a ghost story.
Yeah.
This is like a campfire story.
Sure.
That's what this is.
Definitely.
This is something I could easily see someone read, memorizing the gist of and telling around a campfire.
Now, and then the question is, can you sort of critique that critically in really any complex way? Because its sort of point is in being brutally simple to get you to one, sort of like the rest of the stories, but even more so, just to get you to the punchline.
And I mean, this doesn't have like that, gruesome turn punchline or anything. It's just, yeah, and then he didn't realize until it was too late that he'd walked into a spider web.
But I would say the punchline is that he goes to look for his friend and then he finds him, but it's not in the way he expected,
Fair enough, but I don't know. It doesn't have the see. Tales from the Crypt is really good at poetic irony, is what you got to remember.
Oh yeah, this definitely doesn't have that.
Yeah, so like I wouldn't call it the punchline, because I think that's what you're more referring to when you say Tales from the Crypt punchline. This is really just a campfire story to me.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree.
Because this is, two teenagers were making out in their car at Makeout Point when they heard on the radio about a escaped prisoner with a hook for a hand. Yeah, with a hook for a hand. And the girl wanted to leave, but her boyfriend said, no, we'll be fine. And he turned off the radio, and they started making out in the back seat. Then they heard a bang, and they were wondering what it is. And then when they looked up, they saw a hook dangling from the window. So it's like, it really is that simple of a story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what can you say about it critically? I mean, it functions as that. I could scare a little kid with this.
Yeah, he could. It's sort of... It's sort of like, this sort of story... It's basically... It's sort of like as basic as sort of this sort of thing gets, It's just sort of
like... Yeah, sure.
It's just sort of like your typical, scary thing happens, but right at the end, and it's sort of all about building up to that, and I don't know. You're right, it does function at what it sets out to do, but what it sets out to do isn't really that complex or extravagant.
It's not ambitious.
No, not at all. It's and I'm sure that this same exact thing was this same exact story was told a million times prior to this in other comic books and other magazines and other pulps and all that. So,
yeah, I mean, certainly. I don't know. It's not as racist as Edgar Rice Burroughs, so I'll give it that.
And I mean, it doesn't get the chance to be that racist, because it's not really. We don't know who this tribe is, like where they are. We don't know if it's an actual tribe.
Yeah,
like
it benefits from its sparsity.
Right.
All right, so rating, I'm going to give this one, since it really is everything it's trying to be, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 shrunken heads.
Oh, you.
What the fuck else am I going to do?
Well, I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5 empty holsters.
Okay. That was my backup, actually.
I took it. So, I don't know, it's just, you're right, it functions at exactly what it sets out to be. But I'm just not. It didn't draw me in. It didn't sort of. It didn't really hit me in the way that I think it was trying to. But again, this thing has been told a million times, so yeah, it's hard for me to critique it on that level as well, because it's like this came out so long ago that if I had read it at the time, it probably would have had more of an impact on me.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go on to the next one, A Fatal Caper. Okay.
Man, this thing is pissed on the cover.
Yeah. So this one is the most, Tales from the Crypt punchline, poetic irony ending there is, and it doesn't have any kind of semblance of a happy ending for anybody. No. So that's what I like about it. This probably is my favorite of the stories in this book.
Me too, definitely. This and the dog one are great.
What'd you just say?
This one and the dog one are great.
Yeah, the dog one's pretty good, too. I think you just like that because you're such an animals guy.
No, that is just like, it's so fucking mundane, like, this guy just wants to fucking get rid of this dog.
We'll get to it.
But okay, fine.
Okay, so Fatal Caper. The premise of this one is, girl buys a book of spells and gets some friends to come over, and they try out the spells, and the friends, one by one, keep disappearing as they try to, undo the horrible spell that they've done that made their first friend disappear, until it's just one guy left, and then a monster comes, knocks him unconscious, and he wakes up and he's being sealed in a coffin, and then it's revealed that his friends really just pulled an elaborate prank on him that somehow made everything okay, and now they can't get the coffin open, so they go to the car to try to get tools, but when they get back, the gravekeeper had buried the coffin, and he refused to dig it up because the body inside was supposed to have leprosy, and the friends moved a body out of the coffin to get him in there.
Yeah.
so now they all have leprosy.
I loved all that.
How many times could you say the punchline is "you have leprosy"?
Not often enough. It's just.
So what Bill is really stumping for is more stories about leprosy.
I don't think there's enough stories about leprosy. I know we don't know enough about leprosy. We need to make the general public more aware of what exactly leprosy is and what it does.
So a bunch of kids go knock on little Johnny's door, and his mom answers, and they ask if he can come out to play, and she says, "Kids, you know little Johnny has leprosy," and little Billy goes, "Well, in that case, can we come inside and watch him rot?"
Wow, sounds
right?
like fun. Let's watch a child slowly die. Anyway, so this is sort of your basic horror setup where a bunch of teenagers go off to do something potentially really stupid and end up paying for it. So yeah, no, I thought this one was one of the more enjoyable ones as well, simply because it had the best punchline of all of them.
I like it because it's the only one with a real moral.
Yeah,
don't let a prank go too far.
Which is, again, it's brutally simple, but it does work. It works, and again, the punchline being as good as it is makes the moral hit a little harder. And the only problem with this is the problem with all these stories. It's like, really, how far do teenagers really go to pull off pranks like this? You know?
I don't know.
Like, do they really buy smoke machines and set up like fake demons?
Okay,
and
fair enough.
Like, did they really go that far? Especially back in the 1950s.
Hey man, people used to be more committed to their endeavors. Now we're a nation of lazy sloths.
You know what though? But I think we're better off because it's like I think we have a better appreciation now of shit that matters than they did back then. Because now we're all sort of like, well, we put the effort in where it's needed. And back then they were like, let's go buy a smoke machine and a fucked up Halloween costume to go scare off whatever his name is, Johnny or whatever, just because we can. It's like, why don't you go read a book or something?
What are you, a bunch of fucking sociopaths?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what? Like,
this is like, no, this really is like, we did that video, that episode on bottom 5 tropes, and one of mine was like a character that seems to have infinite money.
Yeah.
And this kind of fits into that same thing. Like, I do get kind of annoyed by it. Like, how much money did you spend on this endeavor?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, Jesus Christ. This seems like really, really expensive.
They also had to dig up a body.
No, they didn't dig it up. They just went to the graveyard and, like, got one out of a coffin that was already...
Like, what's wrong with these people? Like, they touched a corpse to pull a prank on their fucking stupid friend. Like, what's wrong with these people? Like, I almost think, okay, I'm gonna go this far. It's so out there that the moral is kind of hindered by it because no person would go this far unless there was something psychologically wrong with them.
But it's comic books, dude. Nothing is gauche in comics.
I know, but it's just, it's really far.
I mean, we're talking about the same medium in which Mary Jane was killed by Peter Parker's radioactive sperm at one point. Let's just,
I know, but I think there's a distinction in genre there, though, because it's not like that's high concept superhero fiction. This is sort of not down the earth, but it's just
it's certainly more grounded. But at the same time, you got to remember what you're reading. It's a comic book. It's from the 50s. I can't fault it for that. If it were told nowadays, yeah, it'd be too much.
But I don't know. I think the moral hits less hard just because of how fucking whack the story is. But again, I enjoyed it.
I don't know, like, I think the moral works, especially with the intended audience in mind. Because the intended audience is kids, and kids do go too far with pranks sometimes. And so they need, like, dramatic examples to make them realize just how dangerous going too far with a prank is. Overly dramatic examples, even.
Do you think then that the cast should have been younger? Because I think that would have helped that.
I mean, sure, but at the same time, it was a kid reading it in the first story, too, and it's obviously a grown man, so kids will just put themselves into anyone's shoes.
I'm just saying, though, that I think what would have helped that is that you would have thought that they would go that far, though, is if they were younger. Like, I think these kids are just too old to just sort of go through all this trouble.
Maybe that's fair, but again, we don't really know quite how old they are, so, I mean,
they've
obviously...
They've got to be college age, I'm thinking.
At least high school or college.
Oh no, they've got to be late high school at the very least because they're driving cars. So.
Yeah, And I can agree with that, but I don't know, this really works for me because, like, you know, as a kid, you'd watch, like, sitcoms or cartoon shows or whatever, and there'd always be that one episode where someone gets in trouble, like, you know, Hey Arnold did an episode where, what was it, the character Harold stole, like, a ham or something.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and, like, he had to work at the butcher's shop and all this shit. Like, you know, that's not what happens when you're a kid and you do something that gets you in trouble. I really have a problem with that, because thinking back on it, that's probably why I got into trouble so much as a kid, is because I just assumed that, you know, some kind of elaborate situation would happen and that'd be the worst case scenario.
It's like the episode of Seinfeld where they're writing the sitcom and they're like, well, what if it's like you get in a car accident with a guy and he doesn't have car insurance, so he has to become your butler.
Yeah, like, you just assume it's going to be something elaborate and silly, but, like, they don't actually prepare you for real consequences of doing something wrong.
Like doing hard time for defiling a corpse.
No, yeah. No, but, like, seriously, all those shows and stuff, they'd, like, try to deter you from doing something wrong by showing you, you know, these dramatic examples, but that doesn't scare you because everyone learns a lesson in the end, whereas in reality, it's much worse because, you know, your mom cries.
Yeah.
And, like,
there's
you make
long-standing consequences for your fucked up decisions.
Yeah, and so, like, that's what I like about this, is it's a very dramatic, it's over the top, but it's also legitimately scary, and it helps that it's not resolved. Like, not everyone gets everything worked out at the end.
No, everybody dies.
Right?
And like the guy who walks away like the best is the fucking grave digger, and he just killed a man by accident, so he's not doing that great probably either.
Yeah, so, like, no, this one really does work for me, especially given the context of when it came out and everything. And the intended audience, I think it's a great story for that audience, and it's still a pretty good story for you and I.
I think it's fine.
Okay, so for me, I'm going to go ahead and give this one my highest score of 5 out of 5 gravediggers who just seemingly don't care that they might have actually buried someone alive.
Look at his glassy-eyed look. He's like, I don't care. The dead are my...
Like, I ain't fucking with that shit. I'm like, but they just told you that there was a dude in there. Like, you don't have to touch it if you open the coffin, man.
Well, no, he's already buried it at the point, though, towards the end. Like, I think,
just like, I ain't
digging him up again. I already buried him. Once he goes down, he's down. I'm gonna give it... Hang on, I'm gonna go back for a second.
I'm getting paid by the hour, fuck you.
I feel like we skipped a lot of this. Like, we just sort of jumped right to the punchline, which I'm fine. I mean, there isn't really a lot to cover.
I mean, like, the magic stuff doesn't really do much for me. I'm actually really glad that it wasn't, you know, real magic, yada yada.
I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 bow ties that for some reason people wore casually back then because they didn't know anything.
They were all bigger Doctor Who fans.
Even though the second Doctor had a bow tie, but that doesn't matter because they're all losers anyway, and they should all go.
Well, no, it's the 11th Doctor. He's a time traveler. It totally works.
Fair enough.
All right, so then we have what is it? Backfire.
Backfire.
Yeah.
And weird science.
Weird.
It's weird. It's so weird.
You forgot the doll. Anyway, so Backfire, you seem to like this quite a bit.
I just love how fucking insane it is because as I've potentially established on Ian's channel before, I'm just fascinated by just people who go really far for something for a goal that doesn't really mean that much. Like they'll go super far for something, like the work required is greatly it greatly outweighs the gain at the end of the work. So for instance, in this case, you've got a guy who he really hates his wife's dog. Like he's afraid of it. Everything about the dog just makes him sick. And instead of talking to his wife about it and being like, honey, your dog is fine and all, but it scares the shit out of me and I want it out of my house. This was the 50s. Why would a guy take any shit from his wife? He would just be like, no, that dog is out. This is my house. Like, my house is my castle, whatever. All that bullshit. But he's like, no, I need to conspire behind my wife's back to brutally murder the dog in, the most complex way I can think of. that will require engineering on my part and also a complex trap in order to pull off.
Okay.
So
fair.
He fucking goes through all this trouble, and then he gets locked in like a split second too. Like the plan is set up, and then it immediately goes wrong. He goes downstairs.
It immediately backfires.
Indeed. So homeboy goes downstairs into the basement, and his whole plan is I love this. He's gonna take the dog downstairs to take a bath. And apparently he's scared. He's so scared of the dog he doesn't want to go anywhere near it, but he's not scared enough of it to give it a bath. So he goes downstairs. He's getting ready to set up giving the dog a bath because his plan is he's going to lock the door, the basement door from the outside, and fill up the room with water and drown the dog. So he goes downstairs. He turns the water on, and then boom, the basement door closes and he can't get out. So he's fucked, and he's gonna drown. And guess what happens? He drowns.
Yep.
That's the story.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, like it's really silly. I feel like it could have been better as a comic book if we could have actually like seen stuff with the dog more, and you could have actually done some interesting stuff, especially for the 50s, and have him be an emasculated man.
That would have been interesting, or if you just have him be a real coward and just not willing to face his problems in a more direct, sort of proactive way. Because I'm telling you, the way this guy goes about trying to kill this dog is just so bizarre and just...
The interesting thing is, in the first season, the last episode, I believe, is called Collection Completed, and that's a story about a guy who finally retires after, 50 years working at this one company, and, he's, forced into retirement. He doesn't want to quit his job. And he's apparently, never really spent much time at home. He, just gets home from work late at night and goes right to sleep, wakes up first thing in the morning and leaves right for work. So he never really realized how many pets his wife had. And, the way they shoot it in the show, this lady has a legitimate problem. There are pets fucking everywhere. Yeah, just taking in strays and everything. So, he eventually snaps at one point and just starts, killing her pets and stuffing them. And then that pisses off his wife, and then kills him. Yeah, well, to be fair, his wife's, he needed to take an Advil. So he asks his wife to go get an Advil for him. And she comes back with a brownie. He's like, I asked for an Advil. She goes, just eat the brownie. And he does. He's like, it's like, what the you put a fucking Advil in my brownie? I'm a human being, damn it.
That's great. So do you think this that was based on this in any way?
It's possible, but it's just it's similar enough that I feel like you could have gotten a full story, a longer story rather, out of this, and done interesting things with it, the way that did.
Sure, definitely.
So that, I feel like you could have done some interesting stuff if you made him an emasculated man and made the dog kind of a symbol of that.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. Yeah.
And I feel like the dog, being afraid of the dog, could work out better that way. And that the only thing I'd change, as opposed to this elaborate thing, I probably would have done something where accidental death by poison would have been the way he died, because poison's the coward's weapon. So it probably would have been. Not to rewrite the story completely, but to take the basic premise. Man doesn't like his wife's dog, plans to kill the dog. I'm wondering, poison would have made more sense since the dog's name is Hamlet.
Yeah, that would have made more sense. And also, that's a weird name, too. Because the dog is supposed to be this big, terrifying dog. And he names it Hamlet, and I'm like, why did he name it? Why did she name it Hamlet? What's the illusion there? Because Hamlet wasn't this big scary dude. He was your everyman. So I mean, he was rich and he was powerful, but he was a basic dude. So I don't know why she picked Hamlet, or why the writer picked Hamlet. More of the question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a very strong story, but it is certainly a fun thing to read.
It's so... See, this is a better sort of campfire story to me than the last one, because it's this is something I would tell people out of just, this is how fucked up... this is more fucked up to me, and sort of... there's more of an impact to it. So this did more for me than the other story did, even though I think that one is sort of more traditional and sort of better told. It gets what it sets out to do done better. But I feel like this one is sort of more powerful and more impactful and more interesting because of how fucking weird it is.
That's fair.
So here's the biggest problem with this. So is the basement door like vacuum sealed? How does water stay in the basement?
Like, they say it's a concrete room, because my immediate thing would be like, well, there's no way the drywall could possibly take that pressure.
They would burst.
There are a lot of problems here.
What took him so long to realize that he was fucked? To, like, try and knock the basement door down. Like, he could have probably swam over to the basement door, and, before the water gets up to a certain point, he probably could have busted it down. So,
well, like, I'd assume that he tried that, because, like, it just goes from the door slam to the room was almost completely filled with water. He was standing on the tub.
Right. And sort of the ironic twist, or the sort of ironic punchline with this one is that he's trying to get the dog to help him towards the end, but I'm like, what do you think the dog is going to do? Like, it's not going to be able to open the door. It's not a velociraptor.
Well, like, apparently the dog could open the door, because otherwise why does he need to make sure that the door can't possibly be opened from the inside?
That is a good question. Why does that matter then? If it's a fucking dog, it doesn't even know what a door is. It's like part of the wall that opens. Like, it doesn't know what a door is.
I don't know, some dogs can open doors. My girlfriend's family's dog figured out how to ring the doorbell.
Oh, really?
And you know exactly what it did. It kept ringing the doorbell so that people would come look at him, because he's an outside dog.
Okay, gotcha.
Until it broke the doorbell
That is
off.
like some velociraptor shit right there, bro.
He is nowhere near that. Like, that dog's pretty fucking stupid.
Well, he was clever enough to he may be stupid, but he's a great attention whore. He knows how to get attention.
Yeah. But anyway, so, like, there's dogs that have been trained, or, like, there might be a dog ingenuitive enough to figure it out on its own to open the door, but I don't know. This one didn't work for me. Like, I'd actually do the reverse of you. I'd put this one under the Shrunken Head story.
I just enjoyed this one because of just how whacked out it was. Like, that's all I needed from it. And it did that.
Okay. I'm gonna give this one probably like a 2.5 out of 5 elaborate death traps for house pets.
I'm gonna give it 3.5 out of 5 really nonsensical literary illusions. Out of 5.
You already said it.
Oh, whatever. I said it twice, because I don't care.
I didn't read the Crypt Keeper's Corner, did you?
No. We're not going to review this. I read a little bit of it just to see, like, sort of, what were people writing about to a horror comic in the early 1950s, and it's all sort of like, your book is really good, it really scares the willies out of me, Mr. Crypt Keeper. It's like, all right, kid, relax. You're in a comic book. Be happy. Just don't be.
I wonder if the Crypt Keeper has a Twitter.
He probably does.
I want to follow the Crypt Keeper.
Absolutely, dude. I'm telling you, the Crypt Keeper has to have a fucking. Let's
look this up. Let's
find out.
To the internet, everybody. This is a longer episode than the other one.
Yeah, well, there's a lot here because there's a bunch of stories, and even though they're all short, we're spending a lot of time on each one. I think there's only 2 more though.
Yeah, there's only a handful left.
Okay. A little longer though.
Crypt Keeper. If the Crypt Keeper doesn't have his own Twitter, then someone needs to do it.
You need to make it.
I'm not that good at puns, though.
So look up a bunch of puns.
Did I imagine it, or did the Crypt Keeper have a rap song in the 90s?
What?
Oh my god, that's awesome.
There was actually a Crypt Keeper rap song in the 90s?
Yes, apparently it happened. No, I'm not seeing a Crypt Keeper. Hold on, Crypt Keeper on Twitter.
At the real Crypt Keeper?
At Crypt Keeper at Hypixel. No, it's just a guy who calls himself Crypt Keeper. Damn it! Oh well.
That is
at
weird.
Thy Crypt Keeper.
Weird. fucking Marty McFlyhead is on Twitter, and it was just to make one joke on one very specific day. So.
Okay, no, wait, here we go. There's a Crypt Keeper on Twitter. It's probably not official, but I do... Here, let me do it, just because I haven't had a chance to show off my Crypt Keeper voice this episode yet, and that's a crime against humanity. I do enjoy when the ghouls show me some skin and bones, especially when they show me with a kitchen knife. There we go.
That's great.
Yeah, I do a pretty good Crypt Keeper.
When was that written? When was the last time they updated it?
November 4th, 2012.
I guess you could say that Twitter account is dead. I want to go over here now and cry. Anyway.
So yeah, let's go ahead and go on to...
Let's talk about
RX... Death.
This one is just fucking insane.
Like, I guess my biggest problem with this one... Alright, so like, this guy's kind of a shut-in. All he does is work and study, and he lives with his sister, so really no social life. And she demands that he take, a night off, and then he see a doctor, and the doctor writes him a prescription, and they go to get it filled at some kind of weird old prescription shop, and the guys just give him something else that suddenly, like, makes him decide to start having a life. And then he goes out and starts having a life, but randomly, like, his pinky's all shriveled up, and...
It's Vicodin!
After a couple days, his pinky's all completely shriveled to hell, and then, a couple more days, his hand, and then his arms, and they call back the doctor, and he's like, what the hell did you give him? And the pharmacist is like, I don't fucking know.
Isn't that just the way, though? Pharmacist is like, I don't remember.
No, so they, encourage him to get off it, but it's like too late, and he's like slowly rotting to death. So there's another story about leprosy, Bill.
Yes! My dream has come true!
And so like he shuts himself in his room, and he just kind of like rots into the floor.
Yeah.
That's the story.
So, he's digested, basically.
Yeah, he's digested from the outside.
By a drug. Okay.
This one is all over the place. This one, I don't know what the hell they're doing.
I don't know. Yeah. So, I don't get it, man. So, what's the point here?
There is no moral to the story. That's the problem.
Yeah, and it's just sort of like the monster doesn't have any sort of poetic sort of rhyme or reason to it. We don't even really know what it is or if it is a monster. Like, it's just sort of like this guy just gets digested and for no reason whatsoever. It's just really weird. There's sort of an implication that the doctor is sort of afraid of it because it's supernatural in nature and he doesn't understand it. But we don't know, like, sort of where the supernatural force comes from or why it has this particular effect and why it affected him in this way.
It's weird. I noticed kind of a theme throughout this book, and it's a shame that old comics didn't put written by credits enough. Because I'd be curious if all these stories were maybe like written by one guy, or if it was a team. But I noticed a theme throughout like a lot of these stories. The first story had a bit of it. The Caper story had a bit of it, and this has some of it too, where they're like, where a man of science essentially, or someone will go like, oh, there must be a scientific explanation, and then, like, the counterpoint will be, well, there's some things that science just doesn't explain.
Right.
And so, like, it was that in the first story, like, the captain's like, it seems supernatural, and the main characters are like, no, there must be some kind of scientific rhyme or reason to it. And then the Caper story, like, the one dude wants to leave after two of his friends has disappeared. It's like, there's some things that science just isn't ready for. We need to get out of here while we still have our own lives.
Right.
And then the doctor in this story says, well, I don't know what the drug is, and I'll send it to a lab, but it might have supernatural properties that science just doesn't know about.
Right.
So I don't know why that theme keeps popping up, but that was kind of interesting, and I picked up on it.
The guy who wrote this really doesn't like science.
I don't know, like, we talked about it a little bit with Lovecraft, where it's like that idea that there's some things that are just beyond the realm of knowability,
right,
and they should stay there and not be fucked with. Because, like, have you heard Milan talk about the concept of monsters? It's one of the most fascinating things, I think, that has ever come out of his mouth, and that's really saying something.
He fucking said some whacked out, but really interesting shit.
No, but, like, Milan, I think, has the best explanation of monsters ever. It's like, what killed the vampire? Knowing how to kill the vampire. Once you've explained something away, it's no longer scary. What was scary about the monster was that you didn't know about it. You just didn't fuck with it. It was just out there in the world waiting to get you, so you stayed at home where you were safe, and you didn't fuck with that shit, because once it was in front of you, there's no way to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree with that.
And so, like, that's why horror movies have suffered so much, is because now we demand explanations for our monsters.
Yeah, and I think it can sort of depend.
I mean, certainly, but that argument, I do feel, is really strong.
Oh, no, absolutely. That is absolutely the point of monsters. The lack of understanding is what makes them monsters. Monsters, by their very definition, are unnatural things that are unique. So, and their uniqueness is the thing that makes them sort of new and unknown and mysterious. So that's what makes them scary.
Yeah.
So, no, I totally agree with that. That's a very interesting way to describe them.
And this, like, it's not really a monster in this, it's just a dude's falling apart for some reason.
Yeah, does it work on any level for you?
Like, I'm really interested in the mystery, and I'm waiting for some kind of explanation. We just never get it, so no.
Yeah.
Like, it would have worked if the explanation was better, but since the explanation isn't there, it doesn't work. And I know I'm just talking about, oh, well, we don't always need an explanation that would make some monster scary. Sure, but this isn't scary. This is just bizarre.
We don't know what happened to this guy, and more importantly, we don't know why it happened. So he's punishing himself by doing all this studying. He takes a drug that he thinks is going to make him feel better. It does. And then the impact of it is that it makes him start getting digested, and it makes him super depressed and, like, anxious and paranoid again. So my question is the point of this story that you shouldn't take drugs to try and make you feel better? That you should just get out there, drink a glass of water, and just fucking feel good about the world? Or is
like, I think you're really...
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's no way that's what this guy was trying to say.
If you really want to stretch,
yeah,
you can say the moral of the story is an anti-drug message, but you really got to stretch to get there.
But the problem is we don't know what... No, we do, actually. So, we don't know enough about this guy, and we don't know enough about his relationship with his sister to make this problem interesting and to make his transformation interesting.
Right.
It's just like we're just told, here's a person who's doing a thing. Here's what happened to them when they tried to do that thing. And we don't know anything more about that person than that. And that's really frustrating because it doesn't make it scary, it just makes it fucking weird.
This is the story that needs the Crypt Keeper the most.
Yeah, and it doesn't... The Crypt Keeper is nowhere to be found. The narration is told from the perspective of the guy's sister.
Yeah, this is the story where we need the Crypt Keeper to give our introduction and our little moral tale at the end. And it's just not there, and that's the biggest problem with it. This is probably the worst story for me, so I'm going to give it a 1... Nah, not even a 1. I'm going to give it a 0.5 out of 5. Pharmacists who shouldn't have that fucking degree. I
just love that guy. What'd you put in it? Oh, no.
I don't fucking know.
I just do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Oh, no. Question. So, we find that so the guy's like, okay, so there's a drug in it that I don't know if I have. I might have to order it. It's really rare. And I'm like, well, what is the rare drug? And why is this doctor prescribing a rare drug just for a guy who just needs to fucking feel a little bit better about himself?
Importantly, he's not getting what he was prescribed in the first place.
Exactly, so then what was the rare drug in the first place then?
And like the pharmacist mentions that he has to order more, so he keeps ordering more of the wrong thing that's coming in of like this other exotic thing that's coming in this completely separate exotic container.
Right.
That's weird.
It is bizarre. This is not good. I'm gonna give it a 1.5 out of 5.
Really? That high?
Well, only because I just fucking enjoyed I enjoyed the wackiness of it and just sort of like the what the fuck nature of it at the very least. Also the art for this one was pretty good. I thought the monster itself was pretty scary looking.
Kinda, I don't know. I was just too disappointed by the story to care.
Fair enough. I'm gonna give it 1.5 out of 5. digested people.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay,
I really let you down with that fucking last one.
Yeah.
couldn't think of anything
Let's go
else.
ahead and go on to the final story, which is the story on the cover, oddly enough.
Yeah, and is it worthy of being the cover titular story?
No, I think the cover story really should have been a Caper Gone Wrong or whatever that was.
That one was certainly the most Tales from the Crypt of... This one and that one are the most traditional Tales from the Crypt, in my opinion.
A Fatal Caper. This one, really, I don't know.
I'm not saying this one is better than the other one or that it's good at all, but it fits that classic mold that I'm familiar with the best out of all these, including the other one. So I don't know. This one again, it's really weird because it's like they establish the supernatural mystery from the get-go, both on the cover and in the opening panels of the comic, and then the ultimate punchline is just it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's so disconnected to that initial sort of supernatural mystery that I don't know if the impact of it is really there. So basically this guy draws a picture of another guy and he looks scared and there's a vaguely rope-shaped thing around him. And he goes off to this random cemetery or whatever, or a stone cutter.
No, he just goes walking and hears a stone cutting noise and like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm gonna look into that. And then he sees that this guy is carving his name, date of birth, and the date of the day onto a gravestone. And then he's like, hey, and the guy turns around and it's the dude that he drew in the exact facial expression that he drew him in. And then they go into the cemetery, the tombstone carver's house, and apparently this blonde guy that we're following, the artist, slept with the tombstone carver's wife. Ted slept with Ellen. And then the dude's wife starts being all shitty.
She's a real piece of shit.
Right? For no reason, and then she starts cheating on him with Ted and... Oh, it's Alex. She starts cheating on Alex with Ted. Alex walks in, sees them kissing, and kills them both, and then is hung at the end, and his face is in the exact same position as the original drawing, and the circle around him turns out to be a noose.
So, they predicted each other's deaths, in a way, and then both caused each other's deaths, in a way.
It is very Star Trek.
It's very, again, it's very classic Tales from the Crypt in a way, because it's just sort of like, it's this violent, terrible act done out of a moral sort of, or a lack of morality.
See, my favorite Tales from the Crypt ones are the ones that have, sour endings.
Well, I think this one does. I mean, both dudes end up dead.
Yeah, so certainly, Fatal Crash, or Fatal Caper, God, I can't get it right. Fatal Caper, probably Shrunken Head, and then this for me, and then I'll put the dog one down under that.
This one, though, the problem is that, again, we're not given enough information about these people to sort of understand if they deserve it or not, or what their circumstances say about them as people. And then what we're supposed to take away from the moral, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This one, so it sort of seems to imply that the reason why this bad shit happens to these guys is because they both are obsessed with this woman, seemingly just based on her beauty. And they're both...
I disagree with that.
They're both willing to do something horrible just to indulge themselves in her beauty. So, Ted... kisses a married woman, and then Alex kills Ted out of a jealous rage.
See, I don't think that they have that much in common.
Well, they don't, but the only thing they have in common is that they both want Ellen.
Yeah, fair enough, but I don't think that's what, I don't think that's the common thread for them, is that, they both deserve to die because of everything they're willing to do for this woman. I don't think that's the moral.
Well, they're also both artists in a way, because Alex compares himself to an artist when he signs the when he signs the tombstone, so to speak. So they're both sort of creative in a way. So you got that as well. But they're both different because, you know, you got Alex who's just like this fucking older, balding, you know, sort of gangly-looking dude. Then you've got this muscular, young, blonde-haired guy who's moving in on his younger wife. So, I don't know. Again, this is a classic done-to-death sort of story where you just got a guy who's sort of seduced by a married woman who's way prettier than her husband deserves, and then sort of
like sitcom hard to swallow level coupling there.
Yeah, it's like what led to these two fucking getting together? You know, it's like what about him attracted her?
I mean, to be fair, I think this lady is a piece of work kind of bitch. So I wonder the best she can do. Like, I think she can easily draw someone in with their looks, but then could you imagine being like, this is my sister-in-law? That's what this character is. Just, oh my god. Let me read some of the shit she says. I said, shut up. Why can't you be nice like Ted here for a change? Honestly, I don't know what ever possessed me to marry a fool like you.
I also just love, like, see, to me, this is how fucked up I am. I see these sort of, like, general, like, non-cursing insults, like nincompoop, and I read those as being sort of more offensive, because it almost it seems more condescending in a way. Because to me, when you get in a fight with somebody, and you say, fuck you, you're a motherfucking piece of shit, you're a fucking cunt, whatever, that's sort of like, that's not condescending to me, that's sort of like we're speaking on a level as peers, because we're both cursing at each other. When you use words like nincompoop and fool, it seems very condescending, doesn't it?
Yeah, okay, I can see that. I didn't really think of it that way. I just
thought of that now, talking about it, but because it bugged me when I was reading it, and well, not bugged me, but it sort of it jumped out to me.
It stood out. Yeah. That's certainly fair, and I mean, she clearly is condescending to him, and like, I mean, just the shit this bitch says though.
Again, we know nothing about these people beyond the brief glimpse we get at them here, and like, this woman is just a fucking real bitch, and has nothing redeeming about her whatsoever, except like, oh, let's talk about old times because that'll be fun. The rest of the time she's just like, fuck you.
Right? No, like this really is like, I have no problem with her getting murdered.
She doesn't die though, right? It's just Ted that gets killed, right?
No, I believe he kills them both, doesn't he? What happened? Alex just killed some guy, caught him with Miss Cordova, beat him to a pulp. Oh, I guess you're right.
I guess it's sort of open. I guess you could assume either way.
Yeah,
you know
either
what,
one.
If you kill both of them, they probably would have mentioned that.
Yeah, and you can't really see her anywhere in the panel. I mean, you can barely see Alex, so... I don't know, this one, it works, it's okay, it's too short.
Yeah, definitely. I wish this one was longer than... Did you feel like the previous one, the one with the doctor in it, was longer than this?
Yeah, I would have preferred this to be the length of either the first story or the one right before it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's simpler than those, I would say, but that doesn't mean that the depth wouldn't have been welcomed. I think that would have gone a little bit farther to making this work.
Yeah, if you could expand on it a little bit more, like kind of draw out the weird, like, what's the word? The weird similarities that keep happening between these two. That could be more interesting.
If you paralleled and contrasted them more, it would have been more interesting. Because I like the stuff about them both being artists in a way. Like, that must have been done intentionally. And all the stuff about the distinctions between them and them being different as people. Like, that was all the meat of the story. And it just wasn't there enough to sort of make you care enough for the ending to be impactful in any way. Again, we're sort of left with this seeming moral that we don't get to understand because we just don't understand how it relates to the people experiencing it. And I'll say this about the entire book. My biggest problem with it is that the sort of twist ending punchline is so random compared to the events that we see and the people that it happens to that it doesn't make the proper impact on me in most cases. I think the caper one works the best. The dog one, because it's just fucking weird. Then this one following after those for me.
Okay.
That's my biggest problem with this whole thing.
Yeah, and I mean, that's certainly an issue-by-issue thing. Obviously, I mean, it's comics. Some issues are going to be better than the others.
Yeah.
And with, like, I never knew that Tales from the Crypt did, like, multiple stories in one issue. I figured it was, maybe, like you said at the beginning, 2, maybe 3 stories an issue.
Yeah.
At most. I figured they'd have comics that were just a whole issue of one continuous story.
Right. Absolutely.
But no, this is almost like a comic strip book more than it is a comic book. In my mind.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. It's an anthology.
And I mean, this is certainly...
book.
Yeah, and this is certainly more in the vein of, I guess, the comics of the time. Because you gotta remember, like, Detective Comics number 27 isn't a whole issue of Batman. That's just one story in that comic book.
Exactly. Tales from the Crypt is meant to describe, here are a bunch of tales that are creepy.
Yeah.
It's a whole bunch of them. It's not just sort of... It wasn't what the show was, where it was like one per episode.
Yeah, and like that's kind of in the back of my head. I didn't expect it to be exactly like that, but no. So I do really enjoy it though. I've got a love for like anthology style horror. There's a comic book I'm reading now that's doing kind of a similar thing though. It's much more grounded and much more just creep factor. It's called Sanitarium. And, like, it's telling stories about people who are in this insane asylum and, like, how they got there, basically. And everything, of course, is violent as hell.
Gotcha.
And so that's kind of what we're getting here. Is like or without we're getting kind of a return to it, but with a more grounded sense. And so I have a love for anthology horror. I think it tends to work better than straight horror, like just, a movie or whatever.
It tends to be more sort of... Well, it's what horror was in the first place. Like, campfire stories, as we talked about before, are where horror got their start. Ghost stories.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of more in vein of what they're supposed to be anyway.
Yeah, and so, like, I feel like anthology horror just works better than straight one-shot stories, than continuing stories or...
Serialized horror is not as effective as anthology horror, is what you're saying.
Serialized or just like single movies or whatever, like when you drag it out that long, it just drains you and you lose interest and it's not really horror anymore. You always have to mix it with something else.
I wouldn't agree with that as a general rule, but I would definitely say that is definitely a factor. Yeah, no, definitely.
It's very common.
You have to work hard to make a horror movie interesting. I mean, you have to work hard to make any movie interesting, but with horror, it's just it's hard to keep the scares coming and keep the interest level up aside from just the scares, because they weren't.
Yeah.
You're right. They weren't designed for that initially. They were just designed to get you to the scary punchline.
Yeah, certainly. So I don't know. I feel like I like anthology as a medium for horror much more than I do anything else. Not to say that other things can't work. I mean, we did the Omen, the first 2 Omen movies just this week, and those are great, like, continued story in horror. But yeah, so what are we going to give the last story here, Bill?
I'm going to go with 3 mallets out of 5. There was a mallet in this. It stuck out to me.
Okay. I'm gonna go with
He killed them with a mallet. You don't see mallet murder very often anymore.
More mallet murder in stories about leprosy.
Yes, exactly. I want to see a leper going around just fucking bashing people on the head with a mallet. That's what I want in this world. Is that so wrong?
We could call it Whack-a-Leper.
Oh yes. But there would have to be a guy going around whacking lepers, I guess.
It's the story of Jesus.
Oh yeah.
God. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a little less than you. I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. Future telling tombstones that for some reason don't immediately encourage you to leave the fucking area.
It'll just make you go, there's something off about this.
I'm just saying, if I walked in on someone writing my full name down on a tombstone with my date of birth and putting that day as the date of death, I'm just gonna fucking leave.
Police, because that's what I would do. I would call the police and be like, "There's this fucking psychopath."
No, I get the fuck up out of there. So anyway, that'll do it for the final story episode of Geeky Gentleman. But fear not, dear listener, because you are getting yet another bonus episode of Geeky Gentleman this week, and maybe even an additional one. I can't make any promises, though. We're getting the regular episode, one more bonus episode, and possibly an additional one on top of that. We'll see, though.
Wow, it's like Christmas!
Yes, it's like a Christmas and Halloween. They're Tim Burton.
Never seen that before.
Tim Burton is somehow involved for some odd reason.
Judging everybody as they do anything in their life.
Anyway, everyone, thank you very much for watching these horror story reviews Bill and I have been doing. This was a much longer episode, but thank you for joining me for
this
it.
This was like
Bill.
a full Geeky Gentleman.
Yeah, it really was.
No, thanks for having me, man. This was a blast. It was good to go back and re-experience some classic horror that I had already experienced and some stuff that I hadn't, by and large stuff that I hadn't. So I definitely got something out of this, man. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a great time, Bill. I always love talking to you, and you're my horror guy. So, and no, I don't mean that you're a whore. And the guy.
I was about to say. I was like, I was about to fucking throw it down. I was about to be like, what are you trying to say, Ian?
Do you even lift, bro?
Bro, do you even lift? Do you even lift?
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the bro. I mean, I am the fanatic.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Nice.
That was a good one.
Ha 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 ha!